The Niners just wrapped up their first preseason game against the Las Vegas Raiders, and while many people are examining the quarterback battle, in this video I'm going to examine other positions rather than that because I've already done a whole video breaking down the quarterbacks. So in this video, I'll rather break down some standout players on the offense, defense, and special team side of the ball. So let's jump in with the offensive side of the ball, more specifically the wide receivers. There were several big plays out of the wide receiver position group, but I'm going to focus on two rookies that really stood out to me, Ronnie Bell and Isaiah Winstead. Ronnie Bell had 3 catches for 58 yards, averaging 19 yards a catch about, and he looked dynamic every time he got the ball in his hand, making multiple people miss. But he did have 2 drops on the day, and one of those drops did lead to a Brandon Allen interception that was nearly returned for a touchdown. But for being a 7th round rookie, I was pretty impressed by Ronnie Bell today. He looks like a complete wide receiver. Another guy that really stood out was Isaiah Winstead. He only had 2 catches, but he was productive and had a nice catch from Brandon Allen. So with those rookies out of the way, let's move into the tight end position room where Ross Dwelley and Troy Fumagalli both were the leaders here. But the rookies were Cameron Latu and Braden Willis. Latu made 1 catch. It was a bobbling catch, but then fumbled it. So Latu continues his struggles throughout this offseason, and at this point, he looks like a much worse tight end than Braden Willis. Willis had 1 catch for 5 yards, but he also made a notable play on special teams when he flew down there and had a tackle. So with those tight ends out of the way, let's move into the Niners backfield and players that stood out there. I would say Jordan Mason looked extremely aggressive and dominant in his runs. TDP also exhibited a nice burst. Someone that let me down a little bit on a drop pass was Kalen LeBourne, but he didn't receive a whole lot of action in comparison to McNichols. In this game, the Niners running backs were adequate. They weren't fantastic, but they weren't really ever able, given the opportunity, to be fantastic. They fell behind early, and it was a struggle for the Niners to try to keep up. Speaking about a group that really struggled to keep up, the Niners offensive line wasn't able to keep up with the Raiders defensive line at all. I mean, Trey Lance was sacked numerous times, and it seemed like pressure was always there. So with some positives as well as negatives laid out on the offensive side of the ball, now it's time to move into the defensive side of the ball that really struggled today against the run and pass. They just were pretty poor overall. But let's highlight some players that stood out. The first position group we're going to examine is the defensive line, more specifically Clelin Ferrell. He's a defensive end, and it looks like he might be a good reclamation project for Chris Kasarik. He looked like he got in the backfield numerous times and also came away with a sack today. The rest of the defensive line wasn't too impressive to me, as the Raiders kind of had their way with the 49ers in this game. Now moving back a little bit into the linebacking spot, there was a rookie, actually 2, who impressed me here today. Jalen Graham, he had 5 tackles and 1 assist and was flying all over the field. But another guy was D. Winters. He even chased down an in-around play and drove it all the way to the sideline. His 4.4 speed is evident. So now examining the secondary part of the Niners defense, there were several players that really stood out today. Starting with Isaiah Oliver, he was beat multiple times and even once for a touchdown, so not standing out in the way you usually hope. Another player that did well though today was Ambry Thomas. He looked solid in coverage and even had a pass breakup. Moving now on to maybe my favorite rookie, Deshaun Jamison. He didn't do a whole lot on the defensive side of the ball, but on the special team side of the ball, he looked explosive every time he got a kickoff or punt return. I'm excited to see his development, and right now, I think he's a little bit ahead of Ronnie Bell when it comes to punt returns and kick returns. Finally, in the secondary, I was impressed by Jair Brown. He looked to be continually around the ball, and while he just had tackles on the day, I thought he played well. So now that we've covered players both on the offense and defensive side of the ball, we need to talk about the kicker, Jake Moody. He missed both his attempts, 1 from 40 and 1 from 58. It's interesting because at practice, we see Jake Moody hit these routinely, so it's a question now if the lights are becoming too bright for Jake Moody. I don't think this is the case, and perhaps he just had an off day, but it's something to be noted nonetheless. So with the players that stuck out to me today, I want to hear the players that really stood out to you against the Las Vegas Raiders. It would also mean a ton to me if you liked and subscribed. And as always, I hope you guys have a good rest of your day.